on liberty. Second, considerations on representative government. Considerations on representative government. Third important writing is utilitarianism.
Sir?
Utilitarianism.
Book, sir.
Yeah. Fourth important writing, principles of political economy. Principles of political economy. Next is thought on parliamentary reforms. Thought on parliamentary reforms. Next, subjection of women.
Sir, subjection.
Subjection of women.
On की off.
On women. Okay?
On.
Yeah, subjection on women. Now the blueprint A, J.S. Mill as utilitarian scholar. Number 2, J.S. Mill, conception of liberty. And on liberty there is one question. J.S. Mill as the champion of empty liberty, Barker. Comment. Champion of empty liberty, EMPTY, empty liberty, Barker. Comment. Second, that is conception of liberty.
Empty liberty.
Comment. Barker. B-A-R-K-E-R, Barker. Comment. These are two most important questions, two important themes which you have seen there in the questions. Third theme, J.S. Mill's view on representative government, or J.S. Mill as reluctant Democrat. Representative government or J.S. Mill as a reluctant Democrat. So first was J.S. Mill, that is utilitarian scholars. Second, J.S. Mill, conception of liberty. And third, J.S. Mill as reluctant Democrat. Reluctant Democrat. These are the three major themes on J.S. Mill. J.S. Mill as a utilitarian scholar. Prior to J.S. Mill, Bentham propounds theory of utilitarianism.
Prior to?
J.S. Mill, Bentham propounds theory of utilitarianism. Now, the question, what utilitarianism is all about? The very notion of utilitarianism. It implies that the utility value in terms of quantum of pain and that of pleasure, to play vital role as regards the conduct of individuals. Why do the very fundamental question which crop up to all of us. What are the driving forces to regulate the conduct of a person? The utility value to be measured in terms of, to be perceived in terms of two variables, pain and pleasure, are the key driving factors to regulate the conduct of the human affairs. Prior to Jasmine, Bentham opines that nature has placed mankind under the governance of two sovereign masters, pain and pleasure. Nature has placed mankind under the governance of two sovereign masters, pain and pleasure. What does it imply? It implies individuals are to be governed by the pursuit of minimizing the amount of pain and to maximize the amount of quantum of pleasure. So, portrayal of human being as the pleasure-seeking entity under the school of utilitarianism. What is utilitarianism? Utility value. It implies utility value. Utility value. Portrayal of individuals as pleasure-seeking entity, within quote unquote, pleasure-seeking entity. Why do you wish to become an IAS? Pleasure-seeking entity. Portrayal of individual as pleasure-seeking entity. With the assumption, with Bentham's assumption that nature has placed mankind under the governance of two sovereign masters, pain and pleasure.
With Bentham assumptions that nature has
Placed mankind under the governance of two sovereign masters, pain and pleasure.
with Bentham
It refers to
under two
one aspect, two sovereign masters, pain and pleasure.
Yes, sir.
The very perspective under Bentham and that of J.S. Mill as regard to notion of utilitarianism have been different. To put it another way, prior to J.S. Mill, Bentham is a utilitarian scholar. J.S. Mill was influenced by Bentham, but he differed from Bentham on certain counts. How did he share the view with Bentham? What you have noted down. That, like Bentham, he underlines the primacy of utility value. Utility value as the guiding variable to regulate the conduct of the human affairs. For instance, why do all wish to become an IAS? Utility value. and share the Benthamites' assumption that nature has placed mankind under the governance of two sovereign masters, pain and pleasure. Under Bentham's scheme of thought, which has been common there in J.S. Mill too, that portrayal of human being as pleasure-seeking entity, whereby the objective is to diminish the amount of pain and to maximize the amount of quantum of pleasure. So Bentham stands for mode of philosophic calculus. That's called principle of hedonism.
Bentham stands for
Permanent happiness.
Bentham stands for, advocates for notion of hedonism, Hedonism, hedonism.
Hedonism.
Hedonism. What is the principle of hedonism? Very simple. The very, as I have referred to you, the utility value to be measured in terms of two variables, pain and pleasure, is to be assumed as a prime guiding factor to regulate the conduct of human affairs. What does it imply? Bentham assumes that all individuals are rational entity. Bentham, an utilitarian scholar, assumes that all individuals are a rational entity. Bentham is not in IS syllabus, but Bentham is in PCS syllabus. That's why I'm covering Bentham as well as JS. Bentham is for philosophic calculus, mode of philosophic calculus. What is principle of hedonism? Very simple. That is, individual, by virtue of being rational entity, knows their interest. Individual, by virtue of being rational entities, know their interest.
By virtue of being
Rational entity know their interest. They know their interest. And they are rational enough to calculate the amount of pain and that of pleasure. They are rational enough to calculate. This is the principle of hedonism. Rational enough to calculate the amount of pain and that of pleasure. To put in other words, what is the principle of hedonism? Principle of hedonism implies to take note of sum total of pain and that of pleasure. To take note of sum total of pain and that of pleasure. Sum total of pain and that of pleasure. Okay? Now, sum total of pain and that of pleasure. For instance, the IS preparation for an aspirant pursuing this work. So in this process, there are certain amount of pain and that of pleasure also. Pain, housing problem in Delhi, fooding problem, transportation problems, and many more problems. Problems and problems.
pleasure is
Problems and problems.
क्या
As regard to pain and then the pleasure also. So individuals under Benthamite's formulation are assumed to be rational creature, and they are assumed to be calculative. Coming from GNU, it takes 1.5 hours minimum. Right. Transportation problems. Huge transportation problems. So, but individuals are assumed to be rational creatures who know their interest, and they are assumed to be calculative also. Being rational entity, they are assumed to be calculative, to take note of the sum total of pain and pleasure. So Bentham is for measurement of quantum of pain and that of pleasure. Bentham is for measurement of quantum of pain and that of pleasure.
Bentham is for
Measurement of amount of pain and that of pleasure in terms of quantity. In terms of quantity. Quantity. Let's say, yes, transportation, let's say, transportation problem out of 100. For one person, maybe transportation problem coming from JNU. Much high, 30. Coming from the nearby people, that is maybe 10, 5, 7 like this, 15. And 0 from walking distance. Like that. Similarly, fooding problem. For you have the family, so that is 0. For others, 10, 15, 20, depending upon that. Got the point? So, minus amount of pain to be measured in terms of minus. Again, the amount of pain, pleasure that is to be calculated in terms of plus. And for Bentham, that is to be measured against the against the backdrop of following key ingredients. For Bentham, under Bentham schemes of thought, the utility value is to be assumed, is to be measured in terms of following key variables. Measure in terms of following key perspectives. A, intensity. What the term intensity is all about? Let us explain one by one. First, intensity. Second, duration. Intensity, duration. Third, certainty. Certainty or uncertainty. Fourth, propinquity. Propinquity, 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 which implies nearness or remoteness. Nearness or remoteness. Next, fecundity. Next, fecundity, Fecundity, fecundity. That refers to fertility. Whether the land is fertile or not. Next, purity. Purity. And the last, extent. Extent, which implies the number of persons to whom it extends. the number of persons to whom it extends or who are affected. Who are affected. Let me explain one by one. The first is
Intensity.
intensity. No doubt, pain is there. Depend upon the intensity of pain. Transportation problem. So how much is the intensity of transportation problem? Depends much upon that. If a person starts from Jammu Kashmir, traveling every day to attend a class, the intensity of transportation will be acute. So depend much upon the intensity of pain. Similarly, depends much upon the intensity of pleasure also. Second, duration. IS experience, they all know that no doubt they have to suffer problem. But duration of this problem is maximum maybe 1 year, 1.5 years, like that. While duration of pleasure will be for lifelong. That's why one prefers to pursue the program. If reverse becomes true. Clear? Then decision could be different. Third, certainty. The day you clear the police examination, you will become more focused. You will gather an impression near to certainty. If you gather an impression this is uncertain, that it appears to be uncertain, accordingly that the amount of focus that you gets diverted also. Fourth, propinquity. Again, nearness to the goal or remoteness to the goal depends much upon that. If you feel that no, I have cleared the mains also, now automatically the amount of focus gets increased, much intensified. Even if one is to suffer from certain problems, certain amount of pain. Next, fecundity. That is, it's referred to what? The fertile. Let's say if a person who was not really truly having an interest there in study, but somehow made compelled to come and study there, might be due to relative pressure or maybe due to parents' pressure or some other pressures, that will not work. Unless you have a zeal. Unless you have a zeal, did you get a point here? That's very important. Depends much upon that how fecundity that is there. In the same class, if one could be the rank holders, another could be failure also to the same lectures. So depend much upon the degree of fecundity also. How receptive you are, and how far one is in a position to grasp that. Right? Next is purity. Depends that how is the goal. If you look purity depends much upon the degree of purity of your program. You have purity as regard to your preparation. Purity as regard to your preparation. You will have to do the work religiously. Have to be very focused to that. With high amount of purity, not just to show off that I'm studying, but with certain amount of focus and purity. Similarly, in any profession, if you are there all with purity, that's more important. Got the point? And finally, extend the number of persons to whom it extends. The last one is applied to the number of persons. That means under Benthamite formulation, the last is applied only for the Bentham. What is Benthamite formulation? to ensure greatest happiness of the greatest number of the people. To ensure greatest happiness,
Sir, according to
Bentham, to ensure greatest happiness to the greatest number of people. Greatest happiness to the greatest number of people.
yes.
That is the objective of governance, to ensure greatest happiness to the greatest number of people. That means Bentham is all for numerical majority. Greatest happiness to the greatest number of people. Bentham stands for numerical majority. That is rule of majority, majoritarian rule. Bentham. Bentham stands for majoritarian rule.
कौन सा रूल?
Majoritarian.
मेजोरिटी.
Majoritarian rule. On the other hand, J.S. Mill no doubt subscribed to the very fundamental postulates of the school of utilitarianism, but he departed from Bentham's formulation of numerical majority.
Sir, on the other hand, J.S. Mill, no doubt.
On the other hand, J.S. Mill departed from measurement of utility value in terms of quantity. Rather, he advocates for measurement of utility value in terms of qualitative value.
He advocates for
Measurement of utility value in terms of qualitative value. In terms of measurement of utility value in terms of qualitative value. Clear?
yes.
Yes. What does it imply? For J.S. Mill, for Bentham, out of 100, 51 are to take position, this is elephant. It turns out to be elephant. This is rule of majority. Majoritarian rule. For Bentham. J.S. Mill does not subscribe to this view. J.S. Mill stands for qualitative assessment of utility value. Qualitative assessment of utility value. What does it imply? It implies, for instance, that out of 100, even one is to take position, this is marker, this is and will remain marker for. Understood. J.S. Mill is not to count the heads. Under Bentham, head is to be counted. Within code, is to count one and not to count more than one. Bentham.
Sir,
Each to count one and not to count more than one. Bentham.
each to count.
Each to count one and none to count more than one. प्रत्येक को एक गिनो और किसी को एक से ज्यादा न गिनो.
Is to count one.
Is to count one and none to count more than one. What is implied? Bentham talks of what? Equality. Bentham talks of what? Equality.
Equality.
Equality. Equal amount of voting rights. For instance, equal amount of voting rights. In India, we do have universal voting system, universal franchise. Based on Benthamite's formulation, is to count as one and none to count more than one. J.S. Mill rejects this formulation. Why J.S. Mill is called as reluctant democrat? Why J.S. Mill is called as reluctant democrat? As J.S. Mill rejects this fundamental proposition. What is the fundamental traditional proposition of democracy? Each to count one and none to count more than one. In our democratic system also this is Benthamite formulation. How educated you are, irrespective of your educational qualification, all are to be treated equally.
Reluctant Democrat.
In our system, it is not our system equality of vote. Even if you are educated. उसके बाद JS Mill does not agree with this word. JS Mill does not agree with this viewpoint, Bentham's. And that's why JS Mill is called as reluctant Democrats. Why is called as reluctant Democrats? Because let me put across with example for your clarification.
Yes, sir.
In Gujarat election recently, or in any election there in India, what this voting power is all about? It is a power what for? For the assessment of, in terms of voting, one is expected to assess the amount of performance of government of 5 years. This is the voting power, no? Voting power is supposed to be exercised what for? As a mark of exercise of this very power on the part of the voter, what for? To assess the previous 5 years of performance report. This is the fundamental assumption, no? Now the people, the voters standing there in the queue, let's say all from Jhugi cluster area, you ask them who is the President of India? They don't know the name of the President of India. Many of them. They might call Modi. जो टीवी पे ज्यादा दिखता है वही होगा उसका नेता. Getting the point here? प्रीवियस गवर्नमेंट ने पूछा कि कौन सा प्राइम मिनिस्टर है तो कहता कि सुनिएगा. Getting the point here? So what does it imply? Here, so then tell me, if they are not literate enough, they are not enlightened enough to know the leader, how can you expect on their part to that they could be capable enough to assess the performance of 5 years of government's report? You see, there are many other problems. Usually, people are assumed to be of very short memory. People are assumed to be of very short memory. If you do hundreds of work for a person in your last 5 years of tenure period, and let's say today you have committed some mistake, that fellow will remember today's mistake, forgetting the previous 5 years of all. Why? People usually are assumed to be of short memory. Short memory. And that is why few of the leaders deliberately in the 5 years of work they do not usually do work there for the initial 3 years. And they start working in the fag end of 2 years. With this belief. So JS Mill understand this viewpoint. JS Mill has reluctant Democrats. JS Mill opines very significantly that educated people like you, could be more capable enough to assess the government's performance. So educated one should be granted more than one voting rights, while those who are not educated one, they should be granted one, and those who are educated more than one. So on the basis of property, on the basis of educational qualification, he talks of grant of voting rights. This is second region. Note it down. How JS Mill as a reluctant Democrats. JS Mill as a reluctant Democrats, this is second region. The first region, what I told you? He does not subscribe to the traditional viewpoint that is to count one and not to count more than one. A. Why to call him as reluctant Democrat? This is A. B. No doubt he advocates for voting rights. Advocates for voting rights for all. But he stands what for? He stands for weighted voting system. Number two, he stands for weighted voting system. That means vote as per the weight of the person. By weight here doesn't imply the physical weight. By weight refers to what? Weight in terms of educational qualification.
Like what happened in the Rajya Sabha elections or Vidhan Parishad?
To some extent. Weight depends much upon the weight of educational weight in terms of educational qualification. Clear?
It is the proportional representation based on
Third.
territory only.
Third perspective. In our system, there is a mismatch between total percentage of vote and that of seats.
There is a mismatch.
Mismatch between total percentage of votes and that of seats. Might be possible a party secured 10% of votes but could not secure even 3% of total seats also. There is a mismatch between total percent of seats and that of votes. What happened to UP? BSP. BSP in MP elections, not even a single seat. But it look back to percentage of seats, percentage of votes. Percentage of votes was not much of gap between Congress and BJP. Not that much gap, as you see there in terms of percentage of seats. So that is the problems. There is a mismatch. Why? Because system based on first past the post system. First past the post system, that is based on relative majority. This is based on relative majority. First past the post system based on relative majority. Clear? So J.S. Mill does not agree with this proposition. On the other hand, J.S. Mill advocates for proportional representation.
So on the other hand,
J.S. Mill advocates for proportional representation.
Yes, no, stand for.
advocates for
Advocates for proportional representation. That means he is all for reforming the system. Fourth change. J.S. Mill is not for secret ballot system. Rather, J.S. Mill subscribed to the scheme of open ballot system. Fourth,
Not for secret.
not for secret ballot system. J.S. Mill is all for subscribe to the scheme of open ballot system. With the assumption that secret ballot system might leads to various forms of corrupt practices.
with the assumption that
Behind the table might be some deal.
secret ballot system
Might lead to various forms of corrupt practices. And moreover, there is a lack of transparency in the voting process.
moreover
There is a lack of transparency in the voting process in the secret ballot system. On the other hand, he subscribed the scheme of open ballot system. What for? To bring about fair amount of transparency. To bring about fair amount of transparency. But But the stereotype scheme of democracy, in a stereotype scheme of democracy, the scheme of open ballot system, the scheme of ballot system is not compatible with the stereotype scheme of today's traditional scheme of democracy. Open ballot system, in most of democratic countries, there is secret ballot system, no? Not open ballot system. But on the other hand, he subscribed to open ballot system. So for that reason, he is a reluctant Democrat, appear to be reluctant Democrat. In most of the countries, this is a secret ballot system, including India. Next, secret ballot system, secret voting.
इंडिया में कहाँ यूज होता है सिगरेट?
कभी वोट दिया?
अच्छा वो है
हर
ठीक
जगह
है।
Secret ballot system,
इलेक्शन ओपन
secret,
सिस्टम होता है।
stereotype democracy.
गुप्त मतदान, reluctant democracy. Next factor, he talks of reforming the British House of Lords,
He talks of
reforming the British upper chamber, British upper chamber. Next, he advocates for women's rights. Next, he talks of minority representation. Minority representation. And next, he advocates for a strong opposition. Advocates for a strong opposition. Strong opposition. Next, no salary for parliamentarians. No salary for parliamentarians under J.S. Mill's scheme of thought. He intends to relocate and crafts a distinct role for the role and position of the representatives. Relocate and craft a distinct role and position of the representatives.
role and position.
Role and position of representative.
Representative. So is advocacy for weighted voting system and plural voting system. You can add one more. Advocacy for weighted voting system and plural voting system. Plural voting system refers to voting from more than one place. Let's say if you have voting right there in Lucknow or Allahabad, you cannot be allowed to have voting right there in Delhi. Your name has to be deleted from one place. Are you getting the point here?
Yes, sir.
So, but J.S. Mills permits more than one plural voting system. For whom? For certain categories of people. Let's say educated one,
अच्छा. For certain.
highly qualified ones, could exercise plural voting rights because they are more proficient, they are more capable enough to assess the performance of the government. So for all these reasons, he is rated as a reluctant Democrat. On certain count, he talks of reform. On other counts, he appeared to be reluctant Democrats. Other things, as regard to the very notion of utilitarianism, the second question. There are three major questions. The second question.
So, on what
what basis you subscribe that there should be no salary for parliamentarians?
Yeah, no salary for parliamentarians for the region, that they are assumed to be public servant. They are assumed to be all there in doing the service for the for public cause. The moment they are to offer this salary, and then what is the element of difference between the others? Don't allow this system to be reduced as a profit-making institution. Aam Aadmi Party just coming there in power, for instance, there in Delhi, what happened? There has been unprecedented hike of the salary. So doesn't it imply that you wanted to make it a kind of profit-making institution? Democracy is not a profit-making institution. This is not a profit-making institution. This is all the conduct of the politician has to be governed by the pursuit of service, which is missing. That's the major reason. Let's say, if salary is not there, then who will be interested to come to this profession? Those who are to be guided by the pursuit of service to the public. Right? Those who cannot become ever peon and fourth class employee as a MLA, they're drawing handsome amount of salary. So that leads to corruption. Corruption. Right? The people with right track, good track record, will be prompted to come to this profession when there is no salary.
And sir, does it subscribe any other means for sustaining the livelihood?
They are supposed to not here to be there in the system all for livelihood. They are to be there in the system for the sake of being driven by the pursuit of service. That's a point. Under GS scheme of thought. And moreover, politicians are not to come here this profession really for livelihood. They have enough money. Not for the livelihood, but they wish to have and to grab for next 7 generations. Few of them. JS Mill is all for
Few other conditions.
a system, decent system. Next, that is a school of utilitarianism.
Elected democratic.
This is the answer to the question, JS Mill as elected democrat. Second question, JS Mill, it is better to be a dissatisfied. It is better to be a human being dissatisfied rather than, or it is better to be a Socrates dissatisfied rather than pig satisfied. Bentham we have covered. Now I am giving the answer to the question. It is better to be a Socrates or a human being dissatisfied than a pig satisfied. Modern answer to this question. G. Mill.
Then pig satisfied.
J. Mill devised a scheme of utilitarianism. Devised a scheme of utilitarianism. And what is the scheme of utilitarianism? All common things that we have dealt with. Utility value as the prime driving force to regulate the conduct of human affairs. B. Utility value to be perceived in terms of 2 variables, pain and pleasure. C. Agreed with Benthamite's assumption that nature has placed mankind under the governance of 2 sovereign masters, pain and pleasure. D. That is utility value. Utility value to measure not in terms of quantity, but it has to be measured in terms of qualitative value. And what this qualitative value is all about? Not to be measured in terms of numerical majority. Not to be measured in terms of numerical majority. Now, further elaborate the point. One or 2 more things. That under Benthamite's scheme of utilitarianism, under Benthamite scheme of utilitarianism. Satisfaction is the main criteria under Benthamite scheme of utilitarianism. Satisfaction, within quote unquote the term satisfaction is the main criteria to regulate the conduct of human affairs. Satisfaction is the main criteria to conduct the to regulate the conduct of human affairs.
Regulate the conduct of
Human affairs.
affairs.
On the other hand, under J.S. Mill's scheme of thought, satisfaction is not the sole criteria. Under J.S. Mill's schemes of thought, satisfaction is not the sole criteria. Satisfaction is not the sole criteria. That means utility value to be measured not necessarily in terms of quantum of satisfaction.
So that is
Utility value is to be measured under J.S. Mill's scheme of thought, not necessarily in terms of quantum of satisfaction. Necessarily in terms of quantum of satisfaction. Quantum of satisfaction. It implies that it is immaterial as to whether one is satisfied or dissatisfied. It is immaterial whether one is satisfied or dissatisfied.
It implies that
whether one is satisfied or dissatisfied.
It is satisfied or dissatisfied.
So it implies that it is immaterial
It is immaterial
whether one is satisfied or
whether one is satisfied or dissatisfied. Very interesting scholar. Far ahead of his own time. Such an important thing. That satisfaction cannot be the sole criteria for the conduct of human affairs. Satisfaction cannot be allowed to regulate the conduct of human affairs. Then what becomes the sole criteria?
utility value.
Qualitative value, high qualitative value. Rather, high quality value has to be the prime regulating factor. Prime regulating factor to the conduct of human affairs. Factor to the conduct of human affairs.
Quality
Did you get this point? No. Such an important perspective. That it is the quality value, not the quantum of satisfaction, which is to be allowed to regulate the conduct of human affairs. That's very important. Bentham, on the other hand, remember one thing. Bentham assumes that all individuals are
equal.
Rational. And no doubt, equal also. J.S. Mill assumes that all are not necessarily rational. All are not necessarily rational. This very formulation, it is better to be a dissatisfied scholar. Socrates refers to scholar. better to be a dissatisfied human being or scholar, Socrates, with higher amount of quality value, rather than a satisfied pig. Rather than a satisfied pig. J.S. Mill is harsh in his word. Harsh in his word, referring to word pig. Who are to be referred as pig? The people with low level of quality value. The people with low level of intellect. The people with low level of intellect, low level of quality value have been termed as pig. People with low level of intellect, low level of quality value have been termed by J.S. Mill as pig. Clear? For Bentham's, repeating, satisfaction is the sole criteria. For J.S. Mill, satisfaction is not the sole criteria. Quality, value, the level of intellect, that is the regulating factor. Got the point? Satisfaction under J.S. Mill's scheme of thought, what does it matter? Tell me. Quality matters a lot. And it's a fact. See, the educated people are more capable enough to assess the performance of the government now. But ours is a democratic system. There has been debate, that issues have been debated there, the floor of the Constituent Assembly also. And Palkiwala has recommended all for that. Strongly recommended here, in this book. In an article, not there in Constituent Assembly, in an article. Meenu Masani has strongly recommended there, all there, the floor of the House, Constituent Assembly, not to go for universal voting rights. They all should be granted voting rights, but educated should be granted more than one. So that is very difficult a very complex mechanism to implement it, enforce it. And for that reason, in India there has been universal voting rights and all.
State legislative
Now,
councils, graduates have voting rights.
Yeah, that's true. You are correct. That's what Sabha and MLC, all that. That is there
Even
also.
our universal suffrage was highly criticized at the moment when it was adopted.
Pardon?
Our universal voting right has been highly criticized when it was adopted.
That's true.
India being a highly illiterate country, how
Exactly.
can we
Yeah. How can that means India made a quantum jump on this? That's a different story. We'll go on to details of that because Britain has gone on to that stage, to this stage in a phase manner through movements. First of all, women's movement and all that, and then gone on to ultimately this stage. But we made a quantum jump in one single stroke, offering universal voting rights for all. And that's the major. No, that is an achievement also in a way that is even illiterate also having, right also. It's very important. But that issue can be debated and has been debated all, referred by J.S. Mill, all to be debated. Now, utilitarianism perspective is very important here in this context. So it is better to be a Socrates, a scholar, dissatisfied. That means satisfaction is not the sole criteria. The level is the criteria. The degree of intellect, that is the criteria. The degree of enlightenment, that is the criteria. The degree of exposure, that is the criteria. Degree of accreditation, that is the criteria. And not the degree of just the one criteria, that is satisfaction. Not just one, that is the satisfaction. So, this is J.S. Mill's formulation. It is better to be a Socrates dissatisfied than a pig satisfied. Then how to write your model answer? Remember your model answer. First write. All we have written there. Utilitarianism. What? Now, on what basis he defends? That we have already mentioned. On what basis he defends? Quality. Quality based. That it is better that how peak has been termed there as people with low level of intellect. So people with low level of intellect are referred as peak. So it is better to be Socrates, a scholar with high level of quality value, irrespective of the fact that he or she is satisfied or not, satisfied or dissatisfied. What does it matter? That the level of intellect has been upgraded, has been enlightened further, right? So J.S. Mill's scheme of utilitarianism intends to measure utility value in terms of quality, not quantity. On the face of it,
Bentham philosophy is a peak philosophy. What does that mean?
Bentham
Philosophy is a peak philosophy.
philosophic calculus.
Yeah.
This is called philosophic calculus.
By Thomas Carlyle.
Yeah, this is what we have already covered, na? Philosophic calculus. What is the mode of philosophic calculus? Mode of philosophic calculus, that is sum total. We have already given examples. Sum total. Philosophic calculus.
Pleasure and pain.
Pleasure
Hmm.
and pain.
That is what this is called. In other words, principle of hedonism also. This is called principle of hedonism also. But all there in Bentham. And what is principle of hedonism? Tell me.
Yeah, right.
Sum total of pain and that of
Pleasure.
pleasure. Right? So, and in terms of this 6 variables which are referred to,
Yes.
principle of hedonism, duration, intensity, fecundity, and all that, right? Okay. Philosophic calculus. Philosophic calculus. Or the same word, hedonism. Third question. J.S. Mill as the champion. Oh, right.
On the face of it.
Yeah, on the face of it, J.S. Mill advocates for measurement of utility value in terms of quality. In terms of quality. Of utility value in terms of quality. As he assumes that people with higher amount of qualitative value are much better than the pig within bracket, that is people with lower level of intellect. People with low level of intellect. Even if, irrespective of the fact
Bracket में ये भी
bracket close, irrespective of the fact as to whether they are satisfied or dissatisfied.
irrespective of the fact that
Irrespective of the fact as to whether they are satisfied or dissatisfied. Accordingly, J.S. Mill, unlike Bentham, does not perceive that Pushpin is as good as poetry. Pushpin is as good as poetry.
What is Pushpin?
Note it down, explain. Pushpin, P-U-S-H-P-I-N, Pushpin,
Pushpin.
Kanchak Kakhel.
So Pushpin is
Pushpin within bracket, substandard game.
Because this has already been asked.
Pushpin is as good as poetry. I'll explain it further. Pushpin is as good as poetry. Let me elaborate this point further. What is Pushpin? to put in other words, for Bentham,
So to put in लिखना
to put in other words, for Bentham, what? This pushpin refers to what? Substandard game.
again.
Let us say a person by composing poetry, let's say a person is to gain utility value 30 points of utility value, while another person by being indulged in theft or substandard game is gaining 30 points of utility value. So Bentham does not differentiate between the two different acts. Provided the amount of satisfaction is the same, the amount of utility value is the same. But for J.S. Mill draws a line of distinction, sharp line of distinction between two different acts of utility value. Is it clear to everybody? Already you have explained in this. So what pushpin is all about? Pushpin refers to substandard game. Note it down. J.S. Mill draws a sharp line of distinction between a substandard act and higher quality act. A substandard act and a higher quality act. Even if the quantitative value of the utility value remains the same. Of the utility value within bracket, quantitative value of the acts, utility value within brackets. Okay, close.
Remains the same.
Yeah, quantitative value of the acts remains the same.
Quantitative value of the
Acts remain the same. Okay. The last is J.S. Mill as the champion of notion of liberty. A. Champion of notion of liberty. A. He.
champion of notion of
Liberty. He classified human actions into two parts. A. Self-regarding spheres of action. Self-regarding sphere of action. B. Other regarding sphere of action. Other regarding sphere of action. Self-regarding sphere of action. Second, other regarding sphere of action. Self-regarding sphere of action refers to private domain. Private domain. And self-regarding spheres of human action, he assumes that self-regarding spheres of human action, J.S. Mill assumes that individual is sovereign over his own body and mind.
assumes that
Individual is sovereign over his own body and mind. Individual is sovereign over his own body and mind. It implies that in self-regarding spheres of human action,
it implies that
yes, in self-regarding spheres of human action, A state's intervention is not desirable. A state's intervention is not desirable. A state intervention is not desirable. While other regarding spheres of human action, a state's intervention is permissible. On the face of it, J.S. Mill classified two types of functions of state. Types of functions of state. Number one, prohibited area, prohibited domain, and second, constructive areas. In self-regarding spheres, prohibited domain, and second is constructive areas. In prohibited domain,
So in self-regarding spheres.
in self-regarding sphere, a state's intervention is prohibited. In self-regarding sphere of human action, state's intervention is prohibited. State's intervention is prohibited, while in other regarding, a state's intervention is permissible. In brief,
While in
other regarding state's intervention is permissible. Against this backdrop, he outlines his theory of liberty. Theory of liberty. For J.S. Mill,
He outlined.
his theory of liberty. For J.S. Mill, liberty comes within the ambit of self-regarding sphere of human action.
Liberty.
for him,
Liberty comes within the ambit of self-regarding sphere of human action. Comes within the ambit of self-regarding sphere of human action. Self-regarding sphere of human action. In other words, he advocates for liberty of individual as the cornerstone of his formulations. He argues that liberty is important, specifically in terms of freedom of speech and expression. Especially in terms of freedom of speech and expression.
in terms of
Freedom of speech and expression. Change. Basis of justification. Meaning is clear? Liberty. Basis of justification. J.S. Mill justified the notion of liberty in his book titled On Liberty. The conception of liberty in his book titled On Liberty. On his 4 essays, don't write 4, on his 4 essays on liberty.
he justified the notion
In his book title,
On his justified the conception of liberty in his 4 essays on liberties. in his 4 essays on liberty.
Yes.
Essays on liberty. He opines that liberty, namely freedom of speech and expression of individual, namely freedom of speech and expression of individual is must,
freedom of speech and
and expression of individual is must on following grounds.
expression
Is must on following grounds: A,
sorry.
utilitarian basis; B,
So A.
utilitarian basis; B, rational basis; C, moral and ethical basis. Utilitarian foundation of liberty implies that utilitarian foundation of liberty implies that
Foundation of
liberty implies that liberty must be granted to the individuals. Liberty must be granted to all individuals. To all the individuals on the plea that it is having certain amount of utility value,
It is having
certain amount of utility value,
certain.
amount of utility value. For instance, freedom of speech and expression. This opportunity to appear there in UPSC examination also is a part of freedom of speech and expression. Expression in terms of writing. So how this is having utility value? Because through this one can become an IAS, and society also could be beneficial. For society also it is having utility value. How? Society will get the what? Otherwise society will be loser. Did you get the point here? So this liberty is having utility value for both individual as well as society. In this way, liberty is having utility value for both individual as well as society.
liberty having
Is having utility value for both individual as well as society. It enables the individual. It enables the individual to capitalize their resources with the best of their utility value.
The best.
To the best of their utility value. Second, rational basis refers to, rational basis implies that grant of liberty provides a space for advancement of amount of
what's space?
generates a space for advancement of rational standards of individual, rational level of individual. For instance, by participating in the debate, you participate in debate through freedom of speech and expression. So that at the end of the day, what you know that is to sharpen the level of the standard of the individuals. Get the point? So it is rational. It enables the individual to further upgrade and to sharpen the level of rationality. It enables the individual to upgrade and sharpen the degree of enlightenment and rationality. The degree of rationality, enlightenment, and the exposure to society.
Personality, enlightenment.
And exposure to society. Finally, liberty is assumed to be having certain moral value, is assumed to have certain amount of moral and ethical value,
Liberty.
is assumed to have certain amount of utility,
Certain amount of
utility in terms of moral and ethical perspective.
Finally, liberty is assumed to have
certain amount of moral and ethical value, as it is expected to ensure inner development of individuals. Through the scheme of liberty, one is supposed to express the inner voice. In brief, liberty is considered as an indispensable precondition for the realization of individuality. Accordingly, J.S. Mill intends to constitute a strong foundation for the establishment of a libertarian socio-political order. Wherein liberty is assumed to be at the center stage of political discourse. Nevertheless, critics like Barker and others opine that Barker and others opine that liberty outlined under J.S. Mill's school of thought is not substantive in nature, as
Not substantial.
in nature, as meal does not outline a detailed roadmap for the creation of conducive socioeconomic, political, creation of socioeconomic political conditions, socioeconomic, political and moral conditions, moral or ethical conditions for the realization of his conception of liberty. For Barker,
For the realization of
liberty, his conception of liberty. For Barker, J.S. Mill's scheme of liberty is empty, खोखला, empty, which has not much space, which is not having much space for a space for
Not having space.
for the accomplishment of liberty in practice. Barker, on the face of it, subscribed to generate congenial moral, ethical, social, economic and political conditions, social, economic and political inputs,
Condition what then?
inputs, so as to attain the conception of liberty. Liberty in a real sense of term. In a real sense of term. Despite these limits, conclusion made by J.S. Mill through his scheme of liberty is of immense significance.
Through his
Conception of liberty or scheme of liberty is of immense significance, which continue to constitute the cornerstone of
which continue to
cornerstone of discourse. Cornerstone of discourses are the landscape of modern political theory. The advocacy for forming an open, free, receptive, transparent, responsive, and participatory form of socio-political order. No doubt is a landmark initiative made on the part of G.S. Mill.
Made
On the part of G.S. Mill, which is still relevant. Still relevant in today's globalized world. Today's globalized world. Today's globalized world talks of what? Liberty in terms of trade, flow of economy, and to have transparent form of order. The structural adjustment program, ongoing structural adjustment program on the part of IMF and World Bank, expected to look on that,
privatization.
to look on this very council.